Hey everyone, this is Shane, your corrupt overlord from Assorted Meeples, and today we are bringing you a rules video for the awesome game Bunny Kingdom. This is a Richard Garfield game. If you are not familiar with it, it basically brings together the absolute best in strategic drafting and worker placement. This game features anywhere from 2 to 4 players in its base, where you play bunny lords who have found a new world that needs to be conquered. You gather riches, build cities, find resources, and basically spread across the land like breeding rabbits as you hope to get the ultimate title of them all, the bunny ears from the Bunny King himself. So basically, the winner of the game will be the player who manages to get the most points, which of course are golden carrots, by the end of the game. And scoring will primarily work in 2 ways. First of all, on the board, you will be looking to grab lands and resources. For each fief, which is any amount of territory that various bunnies of the same color border, will take the number of towns and castles times the number of resources. For example, for red here, you have wood and you have carrots. That's 2 resources. 2 city towers, 2 times 2, that is a 4-point piece of land right there. Now, if they didn't have the carrot, you would have 2 towers, 1 resource, and that would only be 2 points. As you can see for the much smaller empire here, made of black bunnies, the color of my soul, you have 2 unique resources in carrots and fish, and 1 city, which means this small one is already worth 2 points. Very important to note that only the total number of unique resources count. If you have 2 carrots or 2 woods in the same fief, they only count as 1 of that resource. The other way that scoring takes place is there will be parchment cards, which we will get to in a moment. But basically, parchment cards give you a variety of ways of scoring, from straight up giving you points for treasure, to giving you special missions that involve gathering certain amounts of resources, to what you might call diplomatic sabotage, where you copy other players' cards, or go for secret agendas that get you bonus carrots at the end. After 4 rounds of play, whoever ends up with the most golden carrots between the cards and their lands wins. For the board itself, the big thing is to understand the different types of tiles you'll be playing with. For the most part, the bigger the fiefs you can get, generally the more control you have. So you have squares with resources, which will be the carrots, the lumber, and the fish. You have some blank tiles, which you can acquire cities to make your fiefs even stronger, increase that multiplier, or to put luxury resources on later. And you also have these mountain tiles here, which have the unique ability of being the only places where you can place a 3-tower city. One thing to note about the mountains is they have little sections of lava here that separate them. Even if you had 2 bunnies here and here, these would be 2 separate fiefs because of the lava in between. Very important to keep track of that when scoring. As you draw cards from the deck, some of these will already have cities placed on them. Those will all be 1 points. As you play the game, you may have the ability to upgrade with 2-point cities, or you also have the rare 3 that can only be put on the mountains. Each tower tells you how much you add to that multiplier. Moving on to the gameplay. There will basically be 4 rounds played, and each player gets a hand for that round. If you're playing with 2 or 4 players, you end up with 10 cards per hand. On the other hand, if you have a 3-person game, each of you get a little bit extra ammunition to cause trouble with 12 cards. The way it works is at the beginning, you look at your hand and you pick 2 cards. In round 1, you'll then pass the rest of the hand to your left. In round 3, you'll do the same. In rounds 2 and 4, you'll pass the hand to your right. When you do this, this leads to a lot of interesting strategy. Do you have cards like this where you can claim cities that are already on there? Do you have the resource cards that offer lumber, carrots, or fish? Or maybe you start stocking up on castles, as you can see here with the 1, the 2, and the 3. These are in limited supply, and so getting a lot of these early can be a big winner for you. In addition, you'll also see cards that give you special tokens, like this one, where you can put that down in a blank space and claim any of the 3 main resources on it. You have the ability to get individual ones, like carrots or wood. And you also see these, which are luxury resources. Extremely rare, but they let you get higher multipliers. So instead of just having the 3 resources, you could get a 4th or a 5th, or if you're very bad containing people at the table, even a 6th or 7th. Though it's not advised if you want to compete with them in the game. There are also going to be Parchments, which will get their own little special section, because there is a lot to go over with that. Basically, in each turn, after you pass the hand, if you have Parchments, you place them face down in front of you. Those do not get revealed until the end of the game. And then all the cards that are being played will be played at the same time. You keep doing this throughout the round until all the cards are gone. One thing to note is if you're working on luxury resources, for example, this is gold, there'll be a little symbol that shows a mountain. This means if you're going to place it on the board, it can only go on one of these gray squares. It cannot be placed on plains, on farms, or anything else. The requirement is always right there by the little symbol. Some require you to set them on farms, some require to be on water like pearls. In this case, gold must be in a mountain. And that's definitely something you want to pay attention to, because if you have a luxury resource like gold and no mountain tiles, you can't place it. At the end of each turn, when all the cards are gone, you now have the build phase. At this point, any cities that you have gathered or collected from your hand, or any special resources, you now have the ability to play those. At that point, don't be surprised if in the early game, some people choose to hold on to them. You may not have a lot of land, so you may not know what your best kingdom looks like. But by the 3rd and 4th round, a lot of people will start placing their castles. Because at that point, you know where your strong points are, and you want to get those multipliers as quickly as possible. Points are taken at the end of each round. While the Parchments are never revealed until the very end of the game, for example, if this was round 1, we would count this as 1 point for black. And we would count this here as 4 points for red. In some cases, going for a lot of castles early can add up points to a victory. In others, it's best to wait and see where exactly your strongest 5s are going to show up on the board. After the construction phase, once the scores have been made for the round, you deal out 4 more hands, and you proceed with the next round in the same way as the ones before. A few special cards to note. While the resources, the castles, the land are pretty self-explanatory, there are a few that stick out. There are hobo camps that allow you to temporarily take control of a square. At the end of the game, these can be very strong. You can claim them. They are labeled 1 to 6 to tell you the order they go in. If no one has claimed a piece of land, they can be used to claim those and connect them. If you use them before the end of round 4, however, and someone picks up or draws the square they're on, you lose that camp completely. You do not get them back. The Sky Tower here allows you to connect 2 sections of the board that otherwise would not be connected, which could be a way to take 2 medium-sized 5s and make 1 gigantic one. You also have the rare but very useful Provisions card, which allows you to immediately throw that one in the discard pile and draw 2 more, which gets you a 1-card advantage on the rest of the competition. Now, one important thing to note is that each space can only have 1 city or castle or 1 triangle on it. So, for example, if you put this down because you want an extra carrot there, you cannot put a city there. The space can only support 1 of these, which means strategic placement is very important, because once a resource is set down or once a city is set down, it's permanent. That is where you have it for the long haul against your competition. if you put down a wild card like this, that tile will produce carrots, and then either the wood or fish you also want it to produce, so it could produce 2 resources for you. At the same time, when you're placing cities, the carrot does not go away because you put a city on. You still get the resource points for that. Now we're going to talk about the Parchments, which honestly are one of my favorite strategies for playing Bunny Kingdom. Parchments are the only cards that you do not play immediately upon drawing, but you put them face down in front of you, and you don't reveal them to other players until the end of the game. What's interesting is, as these display, how many different options there are. You have some that just give you points. The Royal Carrot for 6, the Gauntlet for 1, or 4 each if you find them both. These treasures could give you points straight up. And then there are cards like the Treasure Guardian, who gives you bonuses for every single one you get. Or, if you find yourself collecting one of a particular type of resource, the Fisher gives you a point for every fish. The Master Fisher gives you 2 points for every fish. And if you manage to collect 7, the Fisher King gives you a 20-point bonus. If you stack all of them together, that can be devastating. And there's one of these for every basic resource. There's one for the carrots, one for the wood. You have the Merchant, who gives you even more points for luxury resources. The Diplomat, where you get a bonus for every territory you hold at the edge of the board. The Matriarch, if you have the most territories, you get an automatic bonus point. And then you have even ones like the Bureaucrat, where you get points simply for collecting all these parchments as the rest of the table stares at you suspiciously and angrily as the stack piles up. Basically, in the parchments, you get multiple bonuses and multiple different strategies to help you win in the game, which is part of the reason they're such a great strategy. They can work with something else you're doing on the board, and we have seen plenty of games where gathering enough of these alone was just about enough to win it. One of the really awesome things about Bunny Kingdom is just how many different strategies can work to win this game. We've seen winning strategies that involved land grabbing and breeding like rabbits early and often, just taking as much of the board as you can. We've seen strategies where you held off placing castles until the very last round and then just power pointed it. There has been people who have tried to snatch every castle possible whenever it came up. The special luxury game is a very strong one that adds those multipliers. And there have been a few games where it was all about the parchments. A person put away 20 or 25 cards, and when the bonuses were counted, they came out on top. The replay value is huge, because there are so many different ways to play this game. And even before the end of the first game, you're already thinking with the hand, do I take this card to help me? Or do I take this one to block the person who I'm passing to? And if you're really good at playing both, there is a very good chance you will end up the winner of Bunny Kingdom. And by the magic that is known as YouTube video editing, you will notice we have an entirely new world, or more like the heavens, to now conquer. Bunny Kingdom does have a really excellent expansion called, creatively enough, Bunny Kingdom in the Sky. Basically, new cards, new resources. You also have the pretty violet color bunnies, and this also gives the ability to add 5 people to a game. Now what's interesting is the expansion does mesh very well with the regular game. It also changes or introduces a few more mechanics. One of the first things to take note is if you're using the expansion, all the decks do mix together, the different cards mix together. So the cards per player will change depending on how many players there are. With the expansion, there's 12 cards around for 2 players, 15 for 3, 12 for 4, and 10 for 5. You'll notice a lot of new placements up here in the sky, because apparently the heavens are overflowing with resources. Known as wondrous resources, these can also be added to your other ones as multipliers for your points at the end. So there will be 2 things that really stick out immediately besides the very creative new board. 3 if you're a Final Fantasy fan. That third one being that you have a new luxury resource known as chocobos. At least that is what we demand you call the yellow birds that are very clearly chocobos, because what else would they be? We have a new castle, the Carrot Dell, which has a terrifying not 1, not 2, not 3, but 5 multiplier that you can now add to your fiefs. So one of the terrifying but useful parts of the Carrot Dell that's worth noting is that it is a flat value of 5. In other words, if you try to add this to a fief that already has 5 or more, it doesn't do you any good at all. It's wasted. However, if you put this solo on a fief that otherwise wouldn't have any or would have less than 5, then the strength is automatically 5. So it could be a very good way to take some of your smaller, weaker fiefs that you built up and make them very strong in the endgame. In addition to this, you will notice we actually have currency now. One really interesting thing the expansion brings to the table is a new way to score those golden carrot points. Basically, throughout the game, there are a few special cards like the Tax Collector that give you coins directly. There is also a new type of territory. A territory is any square, as you know. Any fief is any number of territories you control. But now, we have what we call districts, which is when you create any 2 squares connected together. When you create a district, you get a coin. And this is very important because these do score you points at the end of the game. So every single time you form a new district, you get a coin for that. So if you have a situation like this where they're apart, and then you get this space, well, you went from 2 1s to a 3. So that counts. That's a district. You do get a point. However, since this is already a district with 2, if you get one here, that does not give you a coin. You only get them for creating new districts, not for expanding the old ones, unfortunately. The way that trade works is at the end of the game, you take your total number of coins and you multiply them by the number of wondrous and luxury resources you have and add those points to your score, making the sky resources there a very powerful potential resource to help you win the game. 2 more special features to keep an eye on: the chimney and the rainbow. The rainbow in many ways works like the Sky Tower did and gives you the ability to connect your heavenly resources with fiefs on your New World resources and allows you to multiply all of them together, which can lead to some terrifyingly high scores in the last round. The chimney is a really interesting feature, where basically on any fief up here where you have one of the basic resources, either the, I will call them flying fish, cloud carrots, or flying trees, any fief that you have of one of those, when you put the chimney down, that basic resource connects to every territory of yours down here, which means you get to use that and multiply all your fiefs in the New World with that. So if you're missing one key resource down here, and you can get it up there with the chimney, that could be a very sneaky way to multiply all your points at the end of the game. And there you have it. With as how you play Bunny Kingdom. You have the New World, you have the Sky Kingdom to conquer, find some friends who are willing to put on the ears and be bunny lords, and then crush your enemies and prove once and for all while you are the master of all the hairs.